Okay, think about this. What if you could get a kind of shortcut? A way to understand how to keep your brain sharp, really sharp, throughout your whole life.
Yeah, instead of those huge, overwhelming lists of do this, don't do that, you see everywhere.
Exactly. What if we could just, cut through all that noise and figure out what really makes the biggest difference?
It's a huge question right now.
Yeah,
Finding real clarity on something as complex as keeping our minds healthy long term.
absolutely. And that's precisely what we're diving into today. There's this groundbreaking new study. It used artificial intelligence, AI, to figure out the most important factors for predicting cognitive performance over a lifetime.
And this isn't just guesswork, it's about what the actual data tells us, crunched by some pretty sophisticated algorithms. What's really strongly linked to having a healthy, agile mind as we age.
So our mission today is to unpack all these fascinating insights. It's research from the University of Illinois, just published in the Journal of Nutrition.
And we're going to explore how machine learning, this AI approach, gave them a kind of clarity, a precision that maybe traditional methods couldn't quite reach.
Yeah, and doing that revealed this, hierarchy of factors. Some were kind of surprising, actually. Factors that really shape how well we focus, how quickly we react, and just how sharp we stay over the years.
So by the end of this, you should walk away with a much clearer, data-driven picture. How your lifestyle, your health metrics, how it all connects powerfully to your brain health.
Okay, let's get into it then.
Yeah.
We all get that cognitive health is, well, it's complicated. So many things are involved: genetics, what we eat, how we live.
Right. But the million-dollar question has always been, as one of the researchers, Shreya Verma, put it, which ones are most important? How do you even start to untangle that?
It seems like a huge challenge.
And that's where the approach here was really innovative. They didn't just use standard statistics, which sometimes struggle with, tons of interacting variables.
What do they use instead?
They used machine learning. The lead researcher, Naiman Khan, explained it well. He said machine learning can basically look at a whole bunch of variables all at once
Okay.
and figure out which ones line up most closely with cognitive performance.
Mm-hmm.
It can reveal these nuanced relationships, subtle things that traditional stats might just miss.
Interesting.
He said it brings precision and nuance to the field, specifically nutritional neuroscience.
That really is the promise of these AI tools, isn't it?
Yeah.
Getting deeper insights. So practically, how do they set the study up? What data do they actually feed into these algorithms?
Okay, so they had data from 374 adults. The age range was pretty wide, 19 up to 82 years old, and about 227 of them were female.
And how do they measure brain function?
They used a very common, well-established test called the flanker test.
Flanker task. Okay, maybe quickly explain that for listeners who haven't heard of it.
Sure. So imagine you're looking at a screen, there's an arrow in the middle, and you just have to quickly say which way it's pointing, left or right.
Simple enough so far.
But then, on either side of that central arrow, there are other arrows, the flankers. Sometimes they point the same way as the middle one, sometimes they point the opposite way.
So they try to distract you or confuse you.
Exactly. It forces you to focus, ignore distractions, and react quickly and accurately. So it measures things like processing speed, accuracy, attention, and what's called inhibitory control, your ability to suppress incorrect responses. Really key cognitive skills.
Got it. So that's the cognitive measure.
Mm-hmm.
What about the other data points they fed the AI?
It was a really rich data set. They had the basics like age, sex, ethnicity, then physical measurements like body mass index, BMI,
Okay.
and crucially, lots on diet. They looked at different dietary indices like the Healthy Eating Index, which measures overall diet quality. They also looked at adherence to specific patterns like the DASH diet, the Mediterranean diet, and the MIND diet, all known for potential brain benefits.
All right. Those are pretty well-known diets.
Yeah, and they included self-reported physical activity levels and, importantly, both systolic and diastolic blood pressure readings.
Wow. Okay. So a really wide range of factors, not just diet or exercise in isolation.
Exactly, a comprehensive picture. And for anyone interested in the tech side, they didn't just use one algorithm. They tested a whole suite of them. Decision trees, random forest, AdaBoost, XGBoost, gradient boosting, different regressions.
Trying to find the best tool for the job?
Precisely. And they found that one called the random forest regressor performed the best in predicting the flanker task results.
Okay, so they have the data, the task, the best algorithm. What did it find? This is the exciting part. What actually matters most according to the AI?
This is where it gets really interesting. The model spat out a very clear hierarchy, and the number one predictor, the single most influential factor for performance on that flanker test, it was age.
Age. Okay, maybe not a huge shocker, but still, number one.
Right. It had what's called a feature importance score of 0.208.
Okay, hold on. Feature importance score. Can you break that down? What does the score like 0.208 actually mean in simple terms?
Yeah, good question. Think of it like the weight or the influence that factor had in the model's predictions. The higher the number, the more power that specific factor age, in this case, had in determining the cognitive outcome. So 0.208 was the highest weight.
Got it. So age has the most weight. What came next in the hierarchy? What else did the AI flag as really important?
The next strongest predictor was diastolic blood pressure. That came in with a score of 0.169.
Diastolic. Okay, interesting. Not just blood pressure generally, but specifically diastolic.
Statistically diastolic, yes. Then, after that was body mass index, BMI. That had a score of 0.079.
Okay, BMI third.
And then systolic blood pressure was fourth with a score of 0.069.
So the big takeaway there seems to be age is key, of course, but then blood pressure, both types. But diastolic, especially in BMI, are really, really significant predictors too.
That's exactly what the data points to. Those three things, age, blood pressure, and BMI, showed really strong links to cognitive performance in this model.
Right. So that naturally leads to the next question.
Yeah.
What about diet and exercise? We hear so much about them for brain health. Where did they fall in this AI-driven hierarchy?
Yeah, and they are definitely still important, but the study revealed a bit of nuance here.
Right.
While they were relevant, they actually played a smaller predictive role compared to age, blood pressure, and BMI in this specific model.
Smaller.
Yeah.
Interesting. How much smaller?
Well, for instance, adherence to the healthy eating index, that measure of overall diet quality, it had an effect. It correlated with better performance, but its score was lower, 0.048.
So still a factor, but not as weighty as BP or BMI.
Exactly. And that fits with other research, linking good diets like DAH or Mediterranean to brain health, but maybe highlights the relative importance. And physical activity. It showed up as a moderate predictor, particularly for reaction time.
Okay, moderate. But here's something you mentioned earlier, the synergistic effect. That sounds really important. What did the study mean by that?
Ah, yes. This is crucial. The AI didn't just look at factors in isolation. It looked at how they interact. And it found that things like healthy eating and physical activity could actually sometimes sort of buffer or offset the ill effects of things like a high BMI or other potentially negative factors.
So they can help counteract the downsides elsewhere.
Precisely. Physical activity especially seemed to interact with other lifestyle factors such as diet and body weight to influence cognitive performance. It's like, they aren't just good on their own, but they might also help protect you if other factors aren't ideal, a balancing act.
That's a really powerful insight. It's not just ticking boxes, but how the whole picture fits together. Were there any factors that the model found surprisingly unimportant?
In this particular model, yeah, ethnicity came out with a very low score, 0.005, and sex was even lower at 0.003. So they had minimal predictive power in this context, according to the algorithm.
Interesting. So, okay, then let's boil this down. What's the so what for you listening? This isn't just, an academic exercise. What are the actionable takeaways?
Absolutely. The researchers themselves really emphasized this. They said this kind of machine learning approach could really help tailor strategies, for older adults or people with metabolic risks or anyone just wanting to boost their cognitive function through lifestyle.
So how do we tailor those strategies based on these findings?
Well, it really reinforces that while, yes, specific diets and exercise routines are absolutely good things, this study really spotlights maybe the biggest levers we can pull for maintaining that lifelong cognitive sharpness.
Which are?
Managing your blood pressure effectively, keeping an eye on your BMI, your weight, and of course, acknowledging the natural impact of aging and working with that.
So focus on those big three, BP, BMI, alongside age.
Right. Diet and exercise are still vital, definitely. But the data here suggests their biggest impact might be in supporting these core physiological markers, maybe helping to mitigate risks associated with them. It gives us a clearer, perhaps, hierarchy of where to focus our efforts for long-term brain health.
So this whole deep dive, it's really shown how these advanced AI tools can slice through the incredible complexity of our health data.
Yeah, giving us a much clearer data-backed picture of what's really driving brain health across our lives. It's not just one thing, but understanding the relative weight of different factors and, crucially, how they all interact.
You listening should now have this kind of distilled understanding, the main predictors for cognitive performance, and it's backed by some pretty sophisticated analysis.
It's a really potent example of how new tools like machine learning can bring genuine precision to understanding fundamental parts of our well-being.
Definitely. So it makes you think, doesn't it? This study used AI to map all these complex health factors onto cognitive outcomes. It leaves us with a final thought to chew on.
Hmm.
What other really complex health puzzles out there, things like, say, metabolism or even mental health conditions, could we understand better? And maybe even manage more proactively?
If we applied similar machine learning techniques,
Exactly. If we use these tools to really unravel all those interwoven influences from our lifestyle, our biology, what else could we discover?